Welcome to the show. My name is Maria. I'm the co-host along with TC. We're delighted to have with us today our guest, Neil Morrison, who's a producer from CBC Canada. Neil, have you traveled to any of the other affected areas, or is Sri Lanka your only stop on this tour? And what have your impressions been so far?
Sri Lanka is the only stop. I've been here for a week. We have a number of journalists who are all over the region. But Sri Lanka, we have a lot of reporters actually in Sri Lanka. We have a lot of producers, we have a lot of documentary makers. And the reason is there's a strong connection between Canada and Sri Lanka. We have a very large Sri Lankan community in Canada, especially in the city I'm in, Toronto. But we are covering essentially the entire region.
I understand that you were recently in the north. Can you tell us a little bit about what you experienced there and how the relief effort is coming along?
The north is an unbelievably devastated area. I mean, well, I should be specific. I was in Mullaitivu and I didn't have a chance to see much of the rest of the region, but Mullaitivu is remarkably devastated. There was absolutely nothing left standing. You'd see the odd house, but essentially, as far as the eye could see, it was completely devastated. So that was a shock. And I think when you think of how bad the devastation is, I was actually quite impressed with how well organized the relief effort is. They've got a very sort of demanding timetable that they're setting up. By January 22nd, they want to have schools open, which means they want everybody moved into relief camps. And there seemed to be good coordination and good cooperation with the NGOs, but I was only in Mullaitivu, so I can't say that was the case across the region. But certainly in Mullaitivu, I was quite impressed with how well they're doing when you think of the task that they have ahead of them.
Neil, you have visited the north, east and the south, and certainly you would have had interaction with the people over there. Could you share with us the experiences and the grievances that they shared with you?
The experiences they shared with me were essentially the impact. What I was interested in was trying to get a sense of what happened on that morning. The most powerful story I heard was simply how the sound of the wave. This is actually in the south. The sound of the wave. I'm in radio, so that's what I'm interested in. There was no sound. It just slowly bubbled up. So this incredible force that destroyed so much, you would expect it to have this roaring, crashing sound. But I think it's almost even more terrifying, and the impression it leaves is worse if it just sneaks up on you. And he said that that's the reason why so many people were caught by surprise, because it actually just sort of quietly bubbled up and then went above their heads and above their houses and then swept everything away. But did it in a quiet way, which I think is a terrifying thought.
Galle is famous for its fishing villages. Can you talk to us about what you experienced and what you learned about how the fishing situation will get back on its feet?
I wasn't looking specifically at how the fishing villages will get back on the feet, but what I can say is, again, it's the same story across the country, or at least along the band that was affected by the tsunami. That our livelihoods are completely destroyed, right? There was one fishing village that I was in where people were walking around the rubble of their homes trying to find where even the place was that their home used to be. So again, getting back on their feet to me seems like an incredible task. But once again, the odd thing was that it was happening. I did see fishermen who were going out. We actually saw two boats that were heading out once again. I think their answer is that it's just something, it's their livelihood. It's something that they've always done, and it's something that they're very eager to get back to. So depending on who they are, the process of rebuilding will be larger or smaller. But there seems to be a determination for the most part to rebuild and continue fishing. It seems to be a way of life that they want to continue. Not everyone though. There are some who are saying, that's it, we're looking for a new life.
Gentlemen, let me just interrupt you for a moment. I've had some experience in the Moratoa-Ponadora area. Let's just take a look at that clip and we'll come right back to our discussion. Speak with us today. Can you tell me how many families are staying here currently?
59 families in this temple. Now 32 families in here.
Has the food aid that has been coming in, has it been from the private sector only and from NGOs?
රාජ්‍ය සංවිධාන වලට වඩා මෙතනදී රාජ්‍ය සංවිධාන කියලා කියන පෞද්ගලික මට්ටමේ මිනිස්සු මේ රටේ අවශ්‍ය කරන්නා වූ සෑම දෙයක්ම මේ වෙලාවේ උදව් කරනවා.
Has the Sri Lankan government been giving assistance at all?
මේමයි රාජ්‍ය මෙදියත්තේ ඉතාමත්ම හොඳයි. රාජ්‍ය මෙදියත්තේම හොඳ වුණාට ඉහළ පෙළෙන් ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන පහළ පෙළට එනකොට ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවද කියන ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා.
In terms of the reconstruction, rehabilitation, have you heard of any plans on resettling these people?
මේගොල්ලන්ගේ සාමාන්‍ය ගොඩනැගීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය කරන්නේ ඉතාමත් ඉක්මනින් නිවාස ප්‍රශ්නය. නිවාස ප්‍රශ්නෙට පිළිතුරක් දිය යුතුයි. මොකද මේ අය මේ පාසල් සමාජයේ කඳුරක හෝ නැත්නම් පන්සල් කඳුරක ජීවත් විය යුතු අය නෙවෙයි. ඒ නිසා ඉතාමත් ඉක්මනින් නිවාස ප්‍රශ්නෙට පිළිතුරක් සෙවිය යුතුයි.
Thank you very much. For taking the time to speak with us today on what's going on with the tsunami relief effort. In your opinion, do you think the Sri Lankan government is doing a proper job?
Of course they are doing a good job. There's no doubt about it. But like I heard that like certain areas is not covered at all, right? Like being receiving so much of funds to to support the victims, but it's not equally distributed. That's what I came to know, because I just came here just about a month ago. I was here during the tsunami time, right? But so far I see that the country is like devastated, and Sri Lankan government is trying their best to do it. But so far I hear that it is not equally distributed for the victims.
The reconstruction effort is the largest task that we face in going forward. In your opinion, do you feel that it will take a short time or a long term?
Definitely it's going to be a long period of time, because today I met a victim. Actually he's really affected in Batticaloa. He's a doctor in Batticaloa district, and he lost his wife and 3 kids, and his parents and his brothers, sisters. He's all alone. In fact, I met him today, and when he told his story, and I was really sad. And like even though by AIDS, like people can support the victims, but who is going to support the people who are psychologically affected? That's my concern. Okay, but it's definitely going to take longer time, because I can't predict any time at all at this point.
Great, thank you very much for speaking with us today. I'm standing here at a beachside in Morrison, looking at the devastation. As you can see behind me, there's just rubble that remains. As much as I too have seen it on television, on the news, on various channels, it's completely different to actually see it in person. This is literally what's real. That was a clip from the Panadura-Moratoa area. We're now back to our discussion on the tsunami and disaster relief recovery efforts. Is there any positive aspect that can come out of this devastation?
I think the most positive outcome could be that the two sides find ways that this unifies the country. The disaster unifies the two sides, and they learn that they can cooperate and they can work together, and that it moves the peace process forward. That would be the most positive outcome I can imagine. And I think it does open. What do I know? Again, I've only been here a week, but it seems to open up a door for that, and I think that would be the most positive outcome if through this disaster, Sri Lanka could work towards ending its previous disaster, which is the war. So,
there are thousands of children who have been orphaned. What do you think is the best way for their development and going forward? Should they be adopted by the many foreigners overseas who are willing to do so, or should they remain in Sri Lanka and be cared for by local caregivers?
I think in Canada this was a big discussion because there was a genuine concern for the children and the impact this has had on the children. And we heard lots of stories about children who have lost their entire family. So I actually think it is out of a genuine concern that people are interested in trying to adopt children who've lost their families. But I heard one thing, actually, this is in Canada, that I thought was the best assessment of the situation. They said when a country has gone through a disaster like this, the last thing you want to be doing is taking away their children. You want to give them time to heal. Later on, years down the road, if that's the situation, maybe that's something that the Sri Lankan government and the Canadian government can work out. But right now, I think the goal is to heal. And the best way of doing that, I think, is to try to find ways that the children can sort of reintegrate, get back into society, find connections within society. I mean, it's an enormous task. I have no idea how you go about doing that. But I hope that that's what happens, that it happens within the country.
There is allegation by the private media that the government of Sri Lanka is not evenly distributing goods and other essential items to the people affected in the northeast and the south. What are your observations on this?
You know, it's a really tough question, and I know there's a lot of controversy around that, and I didn't have a chance to see all of the Northeast. I went through Kilinochchi. I went from Vavuniya to Kilinochchi to Mullaitivu, and then I took the road back. My experience was that however the aid is getting into that region, it is being distributed well within the region. It seems to be. And there seem to be a lot of the NGOs seem to be pretty happy with their cooperation and their working relationship with the LTTE. So where they're getting the money for their aid, is the money coming from the government, or is it coming from the LTTE, or is it coming from Tamils in Canada? I don't know. I don't have access to their books, and nobody tells me. But wherever it's coming from, there does appear to be a good amount of aid getting through, and in the area that I was in, and it does appear to be being distributed in an organized fashion and in a fair fashion. That's my impression from what I saw in Mullaitivu. But as for the general controversy of where the money is coming for it, that's not something I can actually speak to without being actually able to track the flow of the money.
Do you think that peace will be the result of the situation?
You know, I'm a visitor to this country. I've been here for 1 week, and I'm very quickly actually trying to understand the dynamics and the very complicated history of this country. There are hopeful signs that I've seen. There's been people talking about the two sides wanting to work together. I think this could result in a lasting peace, or it could be a movement, it could be a chance for peace to come, if that continues, if people continue to try to work together. But whether or not it will, you know, that's something, I'd have to be in the country for another 20 years, I think, before I get a sense of that.
In your opinion, what's the single worst aspect of this disaster?
The children. It really is, it's devastating to go, I mean, it's devastating to go to these regions and to see what's happened to everybody, to all their lives. But it's really hard to go to the camps, to go to the welfare centers, and to see children who have lost everything. In some ways, the children are lucky because they're able to bounce back from this sort of thing. At least they're not fully aware of what's gone on. But it really is the hardest thing to see when you go and visit these camps. The one aspect where you really have a hard time as a journalist making it through is when you're confronted with the children. So I think that's the hard memory that's going to stick with me.
Thank you for joining us for today's program. I hope you found it informative and interesting. Join us again for our next edition of That's Real.